You put a janitor in charge of $100 million meeting. One of the board members snapped, his voice low and sharp. Victor Hale didn't even blink. She didn't just lead it, he replied calmly. She saved the entire thing. But what if the woman everyone overlooked, the one who scrubbed floors and took out the trash, used to be a high-powered executive on the global stage? What if she was the only person who could stop a collapsing company from going under? This isn't just a business story. It's about redemption, about resilience, and a secret that turned one ordinary afternoon into a moment that changed everything. Stay with us, because what happens next might just change the way you think about second chances. Victor Hale had closed million-dollar deals like it was routine. He'd weathered 2 messy divorces, outlived the chaos of the 2008 financial crash, and built Hale Holdings from a beat-up desk in his garage into one of New York's fastest-rising investment firms. But nothing, not even his toughest boardroom fights, could have prepared him for what was coming in the next half hour. At exactly 1:45 p.m., Victor ended a phone call with his hand shaking. He was 49 years old, wildly successful, sitting in his sleek glass-walled office on the 29th floor of Hale Tower, and completely out of options. The news he just got was devastating. Henri Moreau, the most old-school, high-powered French investor Victor had ever tried to win over, was already on his way. And he wasn't alone. His son and his legal advisor were coming too. They were scheduled to sign an $85 million partnership that could take Hale Holdings into the heart of a European market. But disaster struck. Louis Duret, the only French-English business translator in Manhattan with the right credentials to handle a deal this massive, had been rushed to the hospital after a car wreck on Hudson Parkway. And there was no one to fill his place. Victor slammed the phone down and whipped around toward his longtime assistant, Tina Rowe. She stood frozen in the doorway, clutching a stack of financial reports like they were a verdict. Please tell me you found someone. Anyone who speaks French and understands corporate finance, he said, pacing like a man seconds from disaster. Tina's face went pale. I've called every agency in Manhattan, she whispered. The best I could find. Is someone available? By 3:30 p.m., Victor came to a dead stop. The Moreaus will be here in 20 minutes, he muttered under his breath. If we don't close this today, half the company's gone. 3 years of planning. $40 million already sunk. All of it crumbling because of one missing translator. He could feel the panic taking over. Everyone at Hale Holdings knew. This wasn't just any deal. This was the deal. The partnership with Moreau and Associates would open every major door in Europe, multiply their valuation tenfold, and finally give them a place on the global stage. We could try Google Translate? Tina offered softly, clearly desperate. Victor gave her a look. Tina, this is a billion-dollar negotiation, not a weekend trip to Montreal. Then the phone rang. Victor snatched it up, clinging to a thread of hope. A deep, refined voice poured through the line, smooth, precise, unmistakably French. It was Henri Moreau himself, calling to confirm their arrival. Victor could barely choke out, yes. Très bien. Merci. He set the phone down like it burned and whispered, that man thinks I speak French. God help us. From behind the glass walls of his office, staff froze. For the first time ever, they heard Victor Hale shout. 15 minutes, he bellowed. 15 minutes, and we have no way to communicate with them. They'll think we're a joke. Aaron Blake, the CFO, rushed in. I know someone who speaks French. My daughter's teacher. But she's still teaching, and she knows nothing about business. We could ask them to switch to English, Aaron suggested, trying to offer something. Victor turned to him, eyes sharp. They're French investors, Aaron. They expect protocol. They expect culture. They flew here from Paris. If we don't speak their language, we don't get their money. Nina Clark, head of marketing, poked her head in. What if we explained the translator had a medical emergency? Victor shook his head. They'll think we're unprepared. Sloppy. Replaceable. It was now 3:20 p.m. In 10 minutes, 3 generations of the Moreau family would walk through that boardroom door. And Victor still had no way to pitch the most important deal of his life. He collapsed into his leather chair, the weight of it all crashing down. Out the window, the New York skyline blurred behind a wave of rising panic. Tina stood silently nearby, hesitating. I'll try the French-American Institute, Tina said quickly, already reaching for the phone. Maybe someone there, anyone can help. But before she could dial, a sleek black Mercedes glided to a stop right outside the tower entrance. Victor stood up and moved to the window. 3 men stepped out, sharp suits, polished shoes, total confidence radiating from their every move. French. Punctual. And early. They're here, he whispered. And we're finished. But just then, something unexpected broke the tension. From the hallway came a faint, rhythmic sound, the wheels of a janitor's cart rolling across the polished floor. A woman in a navy blue uniform passed by, her brown ponytail tucked neatly under a cap. She pushed a cart full of cleaning supplies, moving quietly like always. Her name tag read, Samantha Cole. For 3 years, Samantha had worked the night shift, silent, efficient, invisible. But today, something shifted. When the word French echoed out of the executive suite, Samantha stopped, not from curiosity, but from a feeling that hit her like a freight train. That one word unearthed something she'd buried long ago: pain, betrayal, and a past life she never expected to revisit. Inside the office, Victor's voice cracked with desperation. "Does anyone in this building speak French?" Samantha froze in the doorway, gripping the rag in her hand. Her instinct screamed at her to walk away, to stay quiet and disappear like always. But then, from somewhere deep inside, the voice of who she used to be pushed forward. "Excuse me," she said, her voice calm and clear. Heads turned. Tina stared. Nina squinted, confused. Aaron raised an eyebrow. "Now's really not the time for janitorial services," Tina muttered under her breath. But Samantha stepped forward. "I heard you needed someone who speaks French." Victor squinted, skeptical. "Yes, but we need fluent French. This isn't ordering croissants. This is corporate law, technical finance." "I know," Samantha cut in gently. "I speak fluent French. I lived in Paris for 10 years. I was director of operations at Lexwin International." The room went dead quiet. Tina's mouth dropped open. Victor blinked twice. "You what?" "I used to negotiate with European clients. I know how the French conduct business," Samantha explained. "I can help, but we don't have time. We need to go now." For a split second, everything hung in the air. Then Victor, standing on the edge of losing everything, looked at her. Not as the janitor, but as something else. A last shot. A wild card. The kind of surprise that could flip the whole game. "Tina," he said finally, "get her into something professional. Aaron, stall them in the lobby. Nina, prep the contracts. And Samantha." "Yes, sir." "God, I hope you're not bluffing." She gave him a quiet, knowing smile. "So do I," Samantha whispered under her breath. "Do you believe people deserve a second chance, no matter where they come from?" She paused. "Would you trust someone from the janitor's closet to save $100 million deal?" Her heart was pounding so loudly she could hear it in her ears as she stepped into the executive restroom. Tina was already there, holding out a navy blue blazer, a crisp white blouse, and a black skirt, clothes from the emergency wardrobe the company kept for last-minute press events and photo ops. Samantha peeled off her uniform, hands shaking slightly. When she glanced up and caught her reflection in the mirror, she froze. It had been 4 years since she'd worn anything remotely professional. 4 years since she'd looked at herself and seen more than a tired outline in the glass. The blazer hugged her shoulders perfectly. The heels clicked with quiet authority. And for a moment, it felt like she was stepping into the skin of a woman she'd buried long ago. But this wasn't about comfort. This was survival. "You sure about this?" Tina asked, her voice flat, but the disbelief was impossible to miss. "I worked at Lexwin International for 9 years, Samantha replied evenly, adjusting the collar of her blouse. "I managed multi-million-dollar deals across Europe and Latin America. I know how the French operate." Tina hesitated, clearly shaken. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" Samantha didn't answer. There wasn't time, and honestly, even if there had been, that story was too complicated, too painful to unpack right now. She stepped out of the restroom, heels tapping confidently across the marble hallway. Now, dressed for the role, something shifted. Employees walking past started to glance up, really look at her. Some stared like they didn't recognize her at all. Others blinked in surprise. But Samantha didn't stop. Downstairs, Aaron was doing everything he could to stall the Moros. Coffee. Small talk. Jokes about New York traffic. Anything to buy a few more minutes. Meanwhile, inside the boardroom, Victor and Nina stood tense until Samantha walked in. The energy in the room changed instantly. She looked like she belonged. And in moments like this, looking the part was already half the battle. Victor leaned in close as they stood outside the doors. "They're formal. Traditional. If we get this wrong, they'll walk out." Samantha nodded. "I understand," she said gently. "Let me handle the introduction. Let me set the tone." Victor looked at her, then nodded once. "All right. It's yours." No time left. No more questions. The boardroom doors swung open. 3 sharply dressed men entered with practiced elegance. At the front, Henri Moreau, tall, commanding, every bit the aristocrat with a gleaming silver pocket square. Beside him, Julian, his son, young, impatient, already glancing at his watch. And following them, Marc Legrand, a corporate attorney Samantha knew all too well from her years in Paris. Sharp, strategic, the kind of man who never missed a detail. Samantha stepped forward before anyone else could. Her voice was steady, refined, and unmistakably Parisian. "Messrs. Au nom de Hale Holdings," she began. Her French wasn't just fluent, it was lived in. She wore the language like a second skin. All 3 men stopped and looked at her, clearly taken aback. Henri lifted his brows, intrigued. Julian lowered his watch and paid attention. Mark tilted his head with cautious curiosity. Samantha moved through the introduction smoothly, welcoming them, addressing the translator's unexpected absence, and offering to serve as their liaison for the meeting. Victor watched, stunned. This wasn't someone spitting out textbook phrases. Samantha was building trust, shifting the atmosphere, and resetting the tone of the room before the pitch even began. When Henri finally responded, he did so with measured respect. Mademoiselle Cole, votre aide est appréciée. Samantha gave him a polite smile. Merci. I spent over 10 years living in Paris. They took their seats, and the meeting officially began. Victor launched into the presentation, his voice unsteady at first, but Samantha was there beside him. Every time he stumbled, she bridged the gap. She added cultural context, explained technical terms, and shaped the pitch in real time with fluid precision. Then came the moment of truth. Julian asked a sharp question, something about tax structuring through international entities. Before Victor could even draw a breath, Samantha stepped in. She explained the regulatory differences between American and European tax law and outlined how their proposed model avoided risk without compromising compliance. Mark narrowed his eyes, testing her. He followed up with a question about precedent. Without hesitation, Samantha cited a 2018 legal ruling and listed 3 global firms that had been penalized under similar frameworks. The room fell quiet for a beat. Impressed silence. Victor leaned toward her during a brief pause. You're not just translating, he whispered. You're selling. You're saving this deal. Samantha didn't answer. She didn't need to. She just kept going, adjusting the rhythm of the pitch, clarifying complex terms, anticipating objections before they even surfaced. By the time the 2-hour meeting came to a close, the entire dynamic had flipped. What started as a desperate, last-minute gamble had become a masterclass in international business diplomacy, led by a woman no one had seen coming. As the Moreau delegation stood to leave, Henri turned to Victor and spoke in deliberate English. Your consultant is remarkable. Samantha translated the praise with a soft smile. But she subtly redirected the credit, placing the spotlight where it belonged. Mr. Moreau said the presentation was very strong, sir, Samantha reported calmly. Victor heard the way she phrased it, the subtle deflection. She was still protecting him, still playing her role with poise and precision. And in that moment, he wasn't sure if he felt grateful or ashamed. The French delegation agreed to take the revised documents back with them and return the next day with a final decision. As soon as they left, Victor turned to Samantha and whispered, Who are you? Back in his office, Tina, Aaron, and Nina gathered around. Samantha finally sat down and told the truth. My full name is Samantha Cole, she began, voice steady. I was director of operations at Lexwin International for 9 years. Before that, I got my MBA in Paris and worked for 2 global firms in Europe. She took a breath. 5 years ago, my husband, Stephen Arnaud, was arrested in France. Fraud. Tax evasion. I didn't know anything about it, but I was investigated anyway. I was never charged, but my name was destroyed. The room went still. I came back to the U.S. with my son, Noah. No money. No job offers. No one wanted to hire a woman linked to scandal, whether I was innocent or not. Her voice didn't crack, but her hands curled around the edge of the chair. I took the janitor position because I needed health insurance. And rent money. That's it. Tina blinked through misty eyes. Aaron looked like someone had knocked the wind out of him. Nina stood silent, absorbing every word. Victor walked over to the window, stared out at the skyline for a moment, then turned back. You just saved a deal I was about to lose, he said quietly. And you did it better than I ever could have. Samantha didn't respond. She didn't need to. But I'm not offering you a raise, he continued. I'm offering you a seat at the table. A permanent place on my executive team. You don't belong in a supply closet, Samantha. You belong in this boardroom. Samantha blinked, caught off guard by the weight of it, but she didn't answer right away. Underscore 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 underscore. And now, we turn to you. Do you think Samantha should accept Victor's offer and reclaim the life she lost? Would you have had the courage to step forward like she did? If her story moved you, leave a comment with just one word. Ready? And tell us, are you watching from the U.S., Europe, or somewhere else in the world? We'd love to know. Because in part 3, Samantha will face a new decision, one that could rewrite her future once again. And this time, the stakes are personal. That night, Samantha walked home with her worn-out sneakers in one hand and her heels in the other. When she stepped through the door, her son Noah was already at the kitchen table, buried in engineering homework. His laptop was open, papers spread in every direction. He glanced up and paused when he saw her. She was still wearing the navy blazer. Well, he said, eyebrows raised. Did you get promoted to CEO while I was at school? Samantha laughed softly and dropped into the seat beside him. Something like that, she replied. Over dinner, she told him everything. The boardroom, the French investors, the deal, and Victor's offer. All the pieces of the story she'd never had the courage to say before. Noah didn't say a word the entire time. He just listened, his face shifting from confusion to pride, and then to awe. I always knew you were amazing, he said finally, voice quiet. I just didn't know you'd remind the whole world, all in one afternoon. The next morning, Samantha walked back into Hale Tower, early. But this time, she wasn't wearing a janitor's uniform. She wore that same navy blazer. And she wore it with purpose. She passed the cleaning crew in the hallway and gave a nod, respectful, familiar. Not as one of them anymore, but as someone who still carried their dignity and knew exactly what their work was worth. When she stepped into Victor's office, he stood immediately. "I wasn't sure you'd come back," he admitted. "I thought about it all night," Samantha said, standing tall. "And I've made my decision. But I have conditions." Victor raised his eyebrows but didn't interrupt. First, Samantha began, "I want salary reviews for all janitorial and support staff. Minimum 35% raise. They're invisible until a crisis happens. And that's not okay." He nodded slowly. "Second, I want to create a scholarship fund for employees' children. Kids like mine deserve more than luck. They deserve opportunity." Victor crossed his arms but stayed silent. "And third," Samantha added with a faint smile, "I want 1 week to train my replacement. I'm not walking out on the people I've worked beside just because I'm moving upstairs." Victor stared at her for a long moment. Then, without a word, he extended his hand. "Then we have a deal. Welcome to the executive team, Samantha." That day, everything shifted. Samantha moved into his sleek new office on the 27th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the skyline, and a desk with her name on it. Her business card read, Senior Consultant, International Strategy. But within just a few weeks, that title changed again. After Henri Moreau personally requested that she lead negotiations for a second deal, this one valued at over $275 million, her name started circulating fast. Her reputation was no longer a secret. It was spreading loud, proud, and unstoppable. It started in New York. Then it spread to Paris. And soon, across Europe. 6 months later, Samantha and Victor closed a massive deal with an international energy consortium, one that would officially launch Hale Holdings onto the global stage. The press called it the comeback of the decade. Some headlines labeled her the executive who rose from the janitor's closet. Samantha hated that phrase. It oversimplified everything she had fought through. But she understood the appeal. It made for a good story. What mattered more? She was now one of the most respected international consultants in the country. But Samantha didn't stop at success. She made sure every floor of Hale Tower featured public recognition for janitorial and support staff. The scholarship fund grew. Noah made the dean's list. And for the first time in years, Samantha stopped looking over her shoulder. Until one afternoon, while reviewing partnership documents, her phone lit up with a number from Paris. She hadn't seen it in 4 years. It was Stephen Arnaud. "Samantha," his voice said softly. "I saw the article. I saw your name. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I destroyed everything. And somehow, you still found a way to rebuild. You were always the strong one." She sat in silence for a long moment. Then, calmly, she answered, "You don't get to define me anymore, Stephen. Not as your wife. Not as your victim. That chapter is closed." He didn't say another word. She ended the call. A week later, Samantha boarded a flight to Paris. She was heading into negotiations with a Belgian tech firm. As she stepped through Henri de Gaulle Airport, heels clicking, blazer sharp, Samantha didn't feel like a guest in the city anymore. She walked like she belonged. Because she did. When she returned to New York, Victor was waiting with news. "I just got off the phone with Bravari," he said. "They want us to lead a $12 billion offshore project." Then he added, smiling, "They asked for you by name." Samantha took a slow breath. It was the biggest opportunity of her career. She thought about everything, the scandal, the doubt, the fear. But then she thought about Noah, about the kids in the scholarship program, about every woman cleaning offices who used to wear a blazer, and every man fixing pipes who once led a team. She looked at Victor and said, "We'll do it. But I want 5% of the profit allocated to expand our education fund." Victor grinned. "Done." A month later, a major newspaper splashed a headline across its front page. "From cleaning staff to industry icon, the woman who rewrote the rules of corporate America." And they were right. Samantha Cole hadn't just rebuilt her life. She redefined what was possible for anyone who'd ever been counted out. Now we want to hear from you. What did you feel watching Samantha's journey unfold? Did her story remind you of someone you know? Or maybe even yourself? If her story inspired you, drop 100 in the comments so we know you felt it too. And tell us, where are you watching from? The U.S., Europe, somewhere else? We'd love to see how far Samantha's story can reach. And if someone you care about needs a reminder of what they're capable of, share this video, because no matter where you are right now, it's never too late to rise.